welcome back to Voyages of Shelf Discovery. Earl at thelogbook.com here. It is an auspicious occasion. It has been 30 years since the premiere of the 1996 Doctor Who TV movie. An event I remember quite well because I was working at what was at the time the local Fox station. It's a station that I don't think it actually exists now. Either that or it has changed hands so many times it has turned into something else. But today we are opening a box set containing all three costume variations of Paul McGann as the 8th Doctor. And you're probably thinking, no, wait a minute, 3? Yeah, I'll get to that in just a moment. First off, I do want to say I have learned my lesson opening character options things, so I am going to mercifully speed up the actual unboxing process, because look at all the tie-downs that have to be removed. Holy cow. I have, like I said, hard experience from opening past character options sets has taught me a thing or two, but we will slow down briefly to admire the fact that this is a fantastic likeness of the 8th Doctor as he appeared in the 96 movie. But there are two more to go. This one may be less familiar to you. He is the only one with an accessory. We'll get to that in a moment. It's the Dark Eyes Doctor. Now, if you don't know what that is, I will explain it momentarily. Right now, we are just trying to get all three incarnations of this incarnation out of the box. Finally, we have the Time War 8th Doctor, as seen in 8 glorious minutes of television in 2013 called The Night of the Doctor, which was kind of a surprise to all of us. No accessories other than the bag for the Dark Eyes Doctor. I was kind of surprised by that. There's no sonic screwdrivers to be found. Here are all three of them, and just for giggles, I put in the background the Master Replica's 8th Doctor TARDIS console. Is that Master Replica's or is it Eagle Moss? Or is there really that much of a difference between the two? Jury's out on that one. Either way, here you have them in chronological order. The 96 movie 8th Doctor, the Dark Eyes Doctor, and the Time War Doctor. Now, some of these figures have appeared, actually all three of them have appeared before. I had never had the chance to get the first release of the Dark Eyes Doctor, however, so this box set was a welcome re-release for all three of these. However, each of them also have subtle differences from the previous releases. Now, the 8th Doctor, as seen in the TV movie, you see on the left, this was a figure that was exclusive to a box set of every Doctor up through Matt Smith. That was a set that came out, I believe, Christmas of 2010, if I recall, for about $100. 11 Doctors, not a bad deal. And you could get them in the States, too. You could get them at Hastings, which is where that one came from. Now, you can see they have changed up the paint scheme a bit on the newer one on the right. And so he is perhaps slightly more accurate to his appearance in the TV movie. And again, just for giggles, because we are commemorating all things 8th Doctor here, the fairly rare soundtrack CD. Now, this is a re-release of that. The original, which I did originally have, came out in 97, came out a year after the TV movie. It was released by a label called Supertrax which released a lot of rare Holy Grail stuff. They were the first label to put the Galaxy Quest soundtrack out there, among other things. War Games was another one that they were first across the line with. However, Supertrax was kind of notorious for barely operating above board, if they were operating above board at all. Interesting story about soundtrack collecting for another time. So there we have the Eighth Doctor, probably the most familiar version of him. Now, Dark Eyes Doctor, if you're not familiar with this one, obviously the figure is kind of a kit bash of the Christopher Eccleston Ninth Doctor with a Paul McGann head stuck on top. And the head was originally sculpted for the Time War Eighth Doctor. So there's kind of a strange kind of pencil neck thing going on there. But this is not a figure I ever expected would exist. Because the Dark Eyes Doctor, this costume variation of the Doctor, which the costume was chosen by Paul McGann himself. And the reason a new costume was chosen was that Big Finish was bringing the Eighth Doctor into kind of a new phase of his life in audio form. The problem being that there were only about, if I remember correctly, it was somewhere between a dozen and 20 publicity photos of the Eighth Doctor from the 96 movie, and Big Finish had used all of them repeatedly and had resorted to using cleaned up screen grabs from the movie itself to show the Eighth Doctor on the cover artwork. And so finally, with the Dark Eyes story arc, which that was a box set containing 4 CDs, I pulled one of them out so you have some photographic reference for what the costume was like. And by the way, the costume premiered well before the audio dramas did and caused a bit of a stir because McGann just showed up at a convention, I think in Australia, wearing the outfit, and he said, "Hey, this is the new Eighth Doctor costume," which everyone was like, "Wait, what?" I mean, you talk about something that started some rumor mongering because, why would you need a costume for audio dramas? Well, you need a costume for audio dramas if you want to do new publicity photography so that you're not stuck with the same dozen photos from 1996. And that's where this costume comes from. And it is a navy blue leather jacket. And it was kind of deliberately intended. At the time, I'm trying to remember when Dark Eyes came out. It was pre-50th anniversary. There was no end point for the Eighth Doctor, and so the costume was intended to be kind of a midpoint between the Eighth Doctor as we had previously seen him and Christopher Eccleston. What nobody realized at the time was that there would be yet a third costume variation. Action figures based on Big Finish Doctor Who are exceedingly rare. I mean, really, it's this one and the blue jacket variation of Colin Baker. That's it. The real-time Sixth Doctor. So, I wish there were more, but apparently there are licensing issues at the intersection of Big Finish and the BBC. And yet, Master Replicas has done static figurines, the smaller statues. They have also done the Dark Eyes version of the Doctor with Livchenko, who is one of that Eighth Doctor's companions in audio form only. So, apparently there is some wiggle room, a little bit of wiggle room. It's kind of controversial to say, oh, I wish character options would do more Big Finish stuff, when there are so many TV characters still yet to be immortalized in action figure form. It would be neat to see, though. And so, after the Dark Eyes Doctor, at some point, probably marking the beginning of the Time War, the Eighth Doctor changes into this outfit, which is somewhat reminiscent of his original costume, but perhaps a bit more disheveled, a bit more rough and ready. On the left, you see the original Time War 8th Doctor action figure, which came out in 2015, late 2015. And on the right, you see the new one from the box set that I just opened. Again, some subtle differences. Really, the original has a color scheme that pops a little bit more to my eye. Maybe my lighting here wasn't the greatest. Still, that we got this version of the 8th Doctor in action figure form, it all was a surprise. And so it is wonderful to see all three of them represented, really. So there you go, our celebration of 30 years of the 8th Doctor. The 1996 TV movie has just come out in the UK as a 4K Blu-ray. They went back and finally found the original film and rescanned that instead of upscaling the master videotape that had aired in 96. They went back and reassembled it from the film negatives. Can't wait for that to come out over here. I may yet get impatient enough to just plunk down for the UK Steelbook, which the artwork on it is gorgeous. I am very fond of the 8th Doctor's era because it's so open-ended. You know, audios, comics, novels. It seemed like Paul McGann would be the Doctor forever because really, after the 96 movie did not lead to a series or any kind of continuation, a lot of fandom, including myself, thought, well, that was it. And I don't regard that as a failure of the 96 movie. I loved the 96 movie. My fondness for it exceeds my willingness to jump over any plot holes or inconsistencies like that. It was better than we had any right to expect it to be, quite honestly. So much better. Because it was an American co-production. It was going to air primarily on an American network. There was a lot of anxiety in the fandom leading up to that. And the fact that it was wonderful, and that we got this wonderful new incarnation of the Doctor out of it, and that we got a swan song for Sylvester McCoy out of it. Which was amazing because earlier in pre-production, the BBC had asked the producer of the 96 movie, oh, please don't do that. Regenerate, if you insist on bringing back an old Doctor to regenerate into Paul McGann, make it Tom Baker. That's wild. That would have opened up a can of worms that I don't think would have served the show well. Instead of generating some alternate timeline where Tom Baker either regenerated into Peter Davison or Paul McGann, Philip Segal stuck to his guns, kept it consistent. Bless him for that. The man was a fan through and through. He was really since John Nathan Turner. And I know it's popular pastime to crap all over JNT. Since John Nathan Turner, we have had producers of Doctor Who have been fans of the show. And sometimes that means that you wind up with an occasional TV story that veers into fan wank. But for the most part, what it really shows is a deep love of the show. And that is something I think we can all agree with.